The morning felt gentle and bright, the kind of day people hope for when they plan an outdoor wedding. Marcus Reed stood in front of a mirror inside the small community center next to the garden. He checked his tie, then checked it again, not because it was crooked, but because his hands needed something to do. He was a calm man most days, but this was his wedding day, and even calm people get butterflies. He looked like the kind of person a town could trust. Steady eyes, a warm smile, and a way of speaking that made others feel heard. He had a quiet rule for himself today: keep work out of sight. He was the mayor, yes, but he did not want speeches about city plans or policy. He wanted a simple celebration with family and friends, music, food, and laughter. His mayor's ID sat folded in his wallet like any other card, and he hoped it would stay right there all day. Naomi, in another room, stood by a window where pale curtains moved with the soft breeze. Her aunt had sewn tiny pearl buttons on her dress, and her mother now fastened each one with care. Naomi taught art at the elementary school, and her students loved how she listened to them. She believed that listening was an act of love, and she treated her class that way every day. That was one of the many reasons Marcus loved her. They had met 2 years earlier at a weekend volunteer event behind City Hall. Naomi stood at a long table, handing out brushes for a mural project. She noticed how Marcus paused between tasks to thank every person. He noticed how she knelt to talk to a child at eye level and asked the kid what the mural should say. They spent the afternoon painting a bright river flowing through the town, with small hands and big hands drawing fish, trees, and houses along the banks. At the end, Marcus asked if she wanted coffee. Naomi laughed and said she only drank tea but would make an exception. One cup led to long walks by the river and nights of talking about home, work, and dreams. The community garden venue suited them. It was not fancy, but it was warm and alive. Raised beds made neat rows, and flowers burst in quiet colors along a stone path. The venue had a gate and signs that read "Private Event," but one side opened to the public park because the garden belonged to the city. That open edge was part of the charm. Butterflies hopped from flower to flower, and children from the park sometimes peered in through the vines to watch. Most people who passed by simply whispered, "Congratulations," and kept walking. This place had a spirit of kindness, and the couple wanted that spirit to surround their promise. By late morning, family and friends arrived with smiles and careful steps on the gravel. The DJ, a friendly man named Kenny, tested the sound and played a few soft songs to set the mood. A photographer moved quietly, capturing small things: a grandmother smoothing the hem of her dress, a friend pinning a boutonniere onto Marcus's lapel, a little cousin wrestling with a bow tie like it was a puzzle. The air smelled like fresh mint from the herb bed and like the sweet glaze of the chicken that the caterer brushed as it sizzled on the grill. Folding chairs were lined up in rows, each tied with a ribbon. Centerpieces had jars of daisies and a sprig of rosemary for a clean scent. The sign-in table had a guest book made by Naomi's students. The cover showed the garden with the river, mural in the background. When people signed their names, they smiled at the drawings and the careful block letters. "Congratulations, Ms. Naomi and Mr. Marcus." Marcus's mother hugged him in a quick, tight way that said more than words. She had raised him to treat people with respect and to help where he could, and she told him she was proud. His father nodded and shook Marcus's hand like he was passing a baton in a relay. "You're ready," his father said. Their friend, Jamal, checked the rings, tapping the little velvet box like it was an instrument. The officiant, Ms. Alvarez, a family friend and a calm voice from their church, reviewed the vows one more time. She liked that they had chosen simple words. "Promises feel stronger when plain words hold them," she said. Marcus agreed. He wanted the day to be simple and honest. In the other room, Naomi laughed when her sister mentioned a tiny sticker still stuck to the sole of her shoe. They peeled it off and shook their heads. "Small things try to steal your focus," her sister said, "but today belongs to joy." Naomi felt that too. She took a deep breath and looked at herself in the mirror. She did not love a lot of attention, but today she felt calm. The dress fit just right, and the hairstyle, soft curls held back by a comb, looked like her, not like someone else. Her mother kissed her forehead. "Let the day be what it is," her mother whispered. "Good things stand on their own." Thus, first guests took their seats. Neighbors from the block nodded at one another and spoke in low voices. A few of Marcus's colleagues came quietly, not to talk policy but to celebrate a friend. They had promised to keep his job private today. There was no press, no city logo anywhere, just a wedding. Someone adjusted the wooden sign at the gate to make sure "private event" faced straight. The venue manager, Kiana, walked the edges. One more time. She placed a small rope along the open side of the garden and added another sign. She knew the park was busy on nice days, and she wanted to protect the couple's space with gentle reminders rather than harsh barriers. Before the ceremony, Marcus slipped outside the gate for a moment and scanned the park. A jogger slowed, took out an earbud, and said, "Big day?" Marcus smiled. "Yes, sir." The jogger lifted his hand and said, "Congratulations," then kept moving. A pair of teenagers on skateboards cruised by and waved. A mom with a stroller pointed at the flowers, and the baby reached out a tiny hand. It felt like the town was giving them a soft embrace. Marcus went back in and took his place. The music changed, and people stood. The ring bearer, a little nephew with serious eyes, walked carefully, step by step, holding the pillow like a treasure. The flower girl scattered petals in a pattern only she understood. Naomi appeared, and the garden seemed to take a breath. She walked with her father down the aisle, and the sunlight caught the small pearls on her dress. Marcus's eyes shone with the kind of light that comes from peace. He did not think about city budgets or meetings. He thought about the way Naomi had stayed late to help a student clean paint off tiny hands, and how she never made a person feel small. He thought about the evenings they cooked simple meals and ate on the porch and talked about their day. Ms. Alvarez spoke in her gentle way. She talked about love as daily choices, about small acts that build a home. She talked about the strength found in kindness, the patience found in listening, and the courage found in telling the truth. The vows were short. Marcus promised to stand beside Naomi in every season. Naomi promised to hold his hand through calm days and hard days. They exchanged rings. People dabbed their eyes. When the moment came to seal the vows, they shared a kiss that felt like a quiet yes. A yes to each other and to the life they would build, one good day at a time. Applause rose like a warm wave. The music lifted to a happy tune. The chairs were moved to the edges to make space for the reception, and guests spilled into small groups for hugs and photos. The buffet opened with colorful salads, tender chicken, roasted vegetables, and soft rolls. Cold water pitchers beaded with condensation, and a table of iced tea and lemonade stood ready with bright slices of lemon. The cake, a 3-layer vanilla, with fresh berries, waited on a side table, a fresh sprig of mint tucked into the top like a wink. People laughed over old stories. Someone told the one about Marcus helping a neighbor fix a fence during a storm last year. Someone else remembered when Naomi organized a Saturday art fair for the kids, using chalk to turn the parking lot into a masterpiece. Marcus moved through the guests, making sure the elders had comfortable seats and that grandparents had a clear view of the dance area. He was used to checking on others, but today it did not feel like work. It felt like care, and care felt natural. He paused by Naomi and squeezed her hand. She smiled up at him with a look that said, "We did it." Their photographer snapped the moment, the simple joy of two people standing close in the middle of everything and seeing only each other. Kiana, the manager, did another quiet loop of the garden edge. She adjusted the rope along the open side and straightened the private event sign again. A few curious park visitors had slowed to look at the flowers. Most smiled and moved on. A teenager with headphones pointed his phone toward the sky to catch a bird in flight. A small boy on a scooter paused to watch the ring bearer chase bubbles. His father gave him a nudge, and they rolled away. The garden, though open to the world, held its shape. The sun slid lower and the light turned soft. The DJ played an old song that made the aunties clap and sway. The little cousins danced in a circle. Naomi's father rehearsed a few lines of his toast on a folded card. He had practiced a lot but would probably forget half of it because joy has a way of washing words clean. Still, he held the card like a steady rail and took a slow breath. On the far side of the garden, near the open edge, a man stepped through the rope as if it were a decoration and not a boundary. He wore a short-sleeved shirt and sunglasses on his head. He looked around with a casual air, like a person who had just wandered into a backyard barbecue. He did not slow at the sign. He did not look for a host. He reached for a skewer from a passing tray, nodded at no one in particular, and kept walking. A few guests, busy with. The man who had stepped under the rope moved with easy confidence, as if every party was partly his. He strolled by the appetizer table, gave a quick grin to the server, and lifted a skewer of grilled vegetables. He took a bite, then another, and nodded like a judge at a food show. No one stopped him because no one wanted to be unkind at a wedding. A few guests assumed he must be a friend of a cousin from out of town. He looked older than most of the young crowd, but not old enough to be a parent. His sunglasses sat on his head like a crown. He had the kind of smile that said, "I belong," even when he did not. Kenny, the DJ, switched to a soft love song. People clapped in a small wave, and the mood stayed bright. The uninvited man took his chance to step closer to the DJ table. He leaned across the small fence that kept guests from the equipment and tapped it twice with 2 fingers. "Hey, my man," he said, voice friendly but strong. "You got anything with more kick? Something classic rock? Let's get this place going." Kenny kept his face kind. "I'm working from the couple's playlist," he said. "We've got a flow planned." The man clicked his tongue, half a laugh, half a complaint. "Ah, come on, just one for me. Got a favorite. It'll wake everyone up." Kenny's eyes shifted toward the dance area where Naomi's little cousins were making a slow train. "It's a family moment right now," he said. "We'll bring the energy later, I promise." The man raised both hands as if to say he meant no harm. All right," he said. "No need to get stiff." He turned and reached for a drink from the water station, then changed his mind and went for the lemonade. He took a long sip and sighed as if the whole afternoon belonged to him. Near the head table, a bridesmaid named Lila noticed him. She knew most of Naomi's circle and all of Marcus's close friends, and she could not place this man's face. She watched him for another minute, hoping a cousin would wave or a neighbor would call his name. No one did. Lila smoothed her dress, walked over with a polite smile, and said, "Hi there, I'm Lila. I don't think we've met." "Which side are you on?" The man grinned. "Oh, I'm just here for the celebration," he said. "Good vibes, right?" Lila kept her tone gentle. "It is a private event today," she said. "Are you a friend of the family?" The man shrugged. "I'm a friend of love," he said, and he lifted his drink like a toast to his own joke. Lila's smile turned careful. "Do you know the couple's names?" she asked, light and kind. He glanced toward the head table, then back at Lila. "Sure," he said, and his voice stalled a little. "Beautiful bride. Great music. I just wanted to be part of it." "Thank you," Lila said, still warm. "We're keeping this space for invited guests. If you came in from the park, the manager can help you find the public area. You can still hear the music from there." The man's smile thinned. "This is a city garden, right?" he said. "Public space?" "It's a city garden that's rented for private events," Lila said. "There's a sign at the gate. We'd really appreciate your help with the boundary." He looked at the rope, then at Lila again, as if a rope could not possibly be meant for him. "I'm not causing trouble," he said. "I'm just standing here." "I know," Lila said, and her voice stayed soft. "And I'm asking you to stand out there." She pointed to the other side of the rope, where the park path curved by the roses. The man's jaw set for a second. He was not used to being told to move. Before Lila could say more, Kiana, the venue manager, approached with the steady walk of someone who solves problems by breathing. "Hi," Kiana said cheerfully, as if welcoming him to a store. "I'm Kiana. We've got a private booking today, but you're very welcome to enjoy the public path. We've set up a spot over there where you can still hear the music." The man lifted his chin. "Isn't this a bit much?" he asked. "It's a garden. I'm not hurting anyone." Kiana nodded. "Totally get it," she said. "It's a beautiful space, and open edges can be confusing. The couple reserved it, though. It's important to them. Help me keep their day smooth." He looked past her toward the crowd. The laughter and soft chatter felt like a blanket he wanted to pull around himself. He had not meant to bother anyone. He had felt drawn to the easy happiness. But now he felt something else. Something like a challenge he did not want to step away from. "I'll just finish my drink," he said, his tone casual but planted. "Thanks," Kiana said. "Would you mind finishing it on the park side?" She kept her body turned so she didn't block his path, as if the air itself was pointing the way. He didn't move. He smiled like a man who believes a smile is a key to any door. "I'll be quick," he said. Across the lawn, Naomi's father stood with his note card and noticed the small cluster forming. He glanced at Naomi, then at Marcus. He did not want to worry them, not during their first dance. He tucked the card in his pocket and walked toward Kiana, ready to back up her request with soft strength. Before he arrived, though, the music switched and children cheered, and the man used that small cheer to blend deeper into the crowd, as if the sound itself was cover. He slipped around Kiana and Lila and headed to the buffet line with a grateful nod to no one in particular. At the buffet, a cousin in charge of refilling trays looked up. "Hello," she said, bright but brief. "Which table are you at?" "Oh, I'll stand," he said. He picked up a plate and added a careful portion of chicken, salad, and rice, as if good manners on a plate could prove he belonged. He thanked the cousin and moved along. Near the head table, Marcus was helping his grandmother get a slice of watermelon just the way she liked it. Thin, no seeds. He noticed the man then, only as a face that did not match any list in his mind, a face in motion and at ease. Marcus put the thought aside because his grandmother was telling him a story about her own wedding day, about a dress made at the kitchen table and music from a radio set on a chair. He listened and smiled and nodded, the way he always did when a story built a bridge to the present. The man finished his plate and, feeling bolder, waved at the photographer. "Get one of me with the happy couple," he said cheerfully. The photographer kept moving. "I've got a shot list to follow," he said, not unkindly. "Later, maybe." "Sure," the man said, easy again. "Later." He walked toward the dance area and clapped on the beat as if giving the music more body. He called out a playful, "Woo!" that made a few people smile and a few others glance over with a question in their eyes. He took the open seat at a table where 3 elders were discussing the cake. "Mind if I sit?" he asked without waiting for an answer, set down his empty plate and reached for the water pitcher. One of the elders, a neighbor named Mrs. Green, gave him a careful look. She had watched the rope, the signs, the gentle way Kiana had handled earlier. She had also watched enough community events to know the difference between a guest and a wanderer. "Son," she said in a quiet voice, "do you know the bride and groom?" The man smiled, softer this time. "I know a good day when I see one," he said. Mrs. Green nodded, her eyes kind but steady. "Good days have boundaries," she said. "That's part of what makes them good." He shifted in his seat, sensing the firmness behind her gentle words. "I'm not causing a scene," he said. "No one wants a scene," Mrs. Green said. "We want joy. That's why we protect it." He stood up, not wanting to be corrected by a grandmother. He walked away, but he did not leave. Instead, he drifted back toward the DJ, who had now cued a favorite of Marcus's mother. The aunties cheered and moved to the middle to dance together. The man tried to join the circle with a big smile and big steps. The circle, trained by years of family gatherings, closed slightly and changed direction in the quiet way people protect their own. He laughed it off and stepped back. By now the question, "Who invited him?" had traveled through the crowd. In short, polite waves. People asked it softly. Some shrugged. Some shook their heads. Lila found Marcus's best man, Jamal, and gave him the quick version. Jamal scanned the lawn and saw the man by the DJ. He also saw Marcus across the way, shoulders relaxed, his hand resting on Naomi's back as they greeted a table of teachers from her school. Jamal decided to try again with Kiana, who had the venue staff nearby. Kiana reappeared beside the man with a glass of water. "How about a fresh drink while you walk me to the gate?" she said pleasantly. He smiled without taking the glass. "You're very persistent," he said. "Only when the job is simple," she said. "And this is simple." "I don't see the harm," he said, glancing at the dancers. "I'm just enjoying the day?" Kiana tilted her head toward the sign. "They paid for privacy," she said in the same even tone. "They asked me to protect it. Please help me do my job." Something in her voice, its steadiness, its refusal to turn sharp, made the man quiet. He was not used to steady. He was used to either quick anger or quick surrender, the two extremes that always opened a door. This calm middle gave him nowhere to push. He looked beyond Kiana and spotted Marcus. He recognized him from the way people leaned in when he spoke, the way a room shapes itself around a leader even when no one announces it. The man's face changed in a small way. He did not know who Marcus was, but he understood that the person who mattered most might soon step forward. Across the lawn, Naomi saw the cluster and the small pause in motion that happens when attention gathers in one place. Her eyes met Lila's. Lila gave a tiny sign, 2 fingers at her side, meaning, "We're okay. Kiana's handling it." Naomi nodded and kept her smile for the teacher table. The man's voice came out a little louder than he meant. "I just don't see why," he began, and the soft bubble of calm around the garden pulled in tighter. Conversations paused without fully stopping. The DJ lowered the volume as if the music itself was taking a step back to let kindness do its work. A butterfly crossed the space between the herb bed and the dance floor, flitting through the golden air like a small reminder that gentleness still had room here. Marcus did not raise his voice. He did not harden his face. He set his grandmother's water glass on a nearby table and turned his full attention to the man. "I hear you," he said in a steady tone. "Boundaries can feel confusing when a place looks open, but this is our wedding and it's a private booking. We need you to stand on the park side." The man shifted his weight, trying to keep his smile working. "It's a city garden," he said. "Public, right?" "It is a city garden," Marcus said, still calm. "And the city rents parts of it for private events, just like birthday parties at the pavilion or school groups that sign up for a time slot. When it's rented, it's a private space for those hours. That's what the signs and the rope are for." The man's eyes flicked to the rope, then back to Marcus. He wanted to keep the upper hand by acting relaxed. He tried a shrug. "I'm not making trouble," he said. "I'm just celebrating love. No harm in that." "I appreciate that you like the joy," Marcus said. We do too. He nodded toward Naomi, who stood a few steps away with her mother and sister, watching with trusting eyes. This day belongs to our families. Please help us keep it peaceful. Kiana stood nearby, steady as a fence post that didn't need to be tall to do its job. Lila hovered at the edge, her smile gentle and ready. Jamal watched from a short distance, giving Marcus room but ready to step in if asked. Mrs. Green, the neighbor with the careful eyes, sat with her hands folded and her chin raised just a bit, as if to say, let respect lead. The man tipped his chin toward the dance floor. I asked the DJ for a song, he said. He said no. That felt unfriendly. Kenny at the table lifted a hand the way chefs lift a spoon to show they're still stirring. Working the couple's list, he said with a small smile. We'll get to the big energy later. Marcus kept his focus on the man. We planned a flow, he said. It matters to us. Then he took a breath, not a sigh, just a small pause to choose the right road. What's your name? The man blinked, surprised by the question. Names make things real. Doug, he said after a beat. Doug, Marcus repeated, as if he were setting the name gently on the table between them. I'm Marcus. That's my wife, Naomi. He let the word wife land and brighten the space for a heartbeat. Doug, the simplest thing is this. We're asking you to step to the park side now. You're welcome to enjoy some cake later from the public table. Doug's smile thinned again. He wasn't used to steady kindness. He was used to either pushback that sparked his own push or fast surrender that let him feel strong. This, even tone and clear ask, didn't give him a familiar script. He looked past Marcus and saw the small, simple details of a life moment. A grandmother patting a child's shoulder, a cluster of teachers holding gift bags, aunties laughing together, with their hands still mid-gesture from a dance. He felt for a brief second like a person standing in a doorway with light behind it, a doorway that wasn't his to cross. He rallied. I'm just one person, he said, softer but still trying to hold ground. What difference does it make if I stand here for a bit? It makes a difference to us, Marcus said. One person can change a whole mood, for good or for bad. Today, we need the mood to be safe and simple. We paid for that, and our families showed up for that. We're asking you to respect it. Doug lifted his chin. Paid for it, huh? So money decides who belongs? He put a little edge in his words, testing whether irritation might open a door. Marcus didn't step into the trap. Money paid the rental, he said, straight and plain. Respect decides who belongs. He let that sentence sit in the air, not heavy, just true. Doug looked down at his empty plate, then at the water jug, then at the rope again, and finally at Marcus's face. He saw no anger there, just a clear line and an invitation to step on the right side of it. Still, the habit of arguing tugged at him. You can't make me, he said, the way a person tries one last key on the wrong lock. Marcus could feel the small ring of attention now, the way a crowd listens without crowding. He could also feel Naomi's trust, warm like the sun on his shoulder. He chose his next action with care. I don't want to embarrass you, he said. I want to be very clear. He reached calmly into his inside pocket and took out his wallet. It was a simple leather wallet, the kind a person has used long enough that it fits the hand without thinking. He opened it, slid out a small card, and held it so Doug could see. The card had the city crest, Marcus's name, and the word mayor. It was not big. It didn't need to be. I'm the mayor of this town, Marcus said in the same even tone he'd had all along, only now his words carried a second weight. Authority used with care. I rented this space as a citizen for my wedding. Kiana manages the venue and the rules. When she asks someone to move from a private event space, she's right to do so. If a person refuses, we have to treat it as trespass on a private booking. I would rather not take it there. I'm asking you, plainly and respectfully, to step to the park side now." Doug's face changed by degrees, like the light shifting when a cloud passes. First confusion. He hadn't expected any official role here. Then surprise. This man, this calm groom, was the person people called mayor. Then a wash of understanding about what his choices meant. Then something quieter, not fear exactly, but a kind of clear air that stripped away his easy excuses. His cheeks lost a little color. He went still, not stiff, just still, like a person who finally hears the end of a conversation. The garden held its breath for half a second and then released it. Kenny, reading the air, let the track fade and lifted a softer instrumental under the moment. The chatter at the tables began again in gentle threads. The children, sensing that the important part was being handled by the grown-ups, went back to their bubble wands and their serious work of making tiny rainbows. Naomi's father, who had taken 2 careful steps forward with his note card, took 2 quiet steps back. He slipped the card into his pocket and rubbed the paper like a good luck stone. Mrs. Green gave the smallest nod, the kind that means well done, and also thank you. Marcus did not move the card closer, as if to wave it. He didn't need to. He slid the ID back into the wallet, then put the wallet away. He had never wanted to bring his job into this day, but sometimes the right tool is the one you already carry, and what matters is how you use it. "Doug," he said, offering not a threat, but a choice. "Here's the path. Step to the park side now, and we'll be all set. If you'd like a slice of cake in a little while, Kiana will have some at the public table. If you'd like to talk about community events or open garden hours, City Hall can help with that on weekdays. But this moment, right now, belongs to our families." Doug opened his mouth, then closed it again. He tried to find a joke. Jokes had rescued him before. "So I've been partying with the mayor," he said with a weak grin, "and didn't even know it." A few polite smiles appeared and thinned quickly. The joke didn't land because the room wasn't asking for jokes. It was asking for respect. Doug took a breath and let it out. He looked at Naomi, who stood with her mother and sister, her hands folded calmly, her eyes kind but firm. He looked back at Marcus, who was offering him a way to leave with his dignity, in place. "I didn't mean to mess up your day," Doug said at last. The words were small, but they were a start. He glanced at the rope, as if checking that it was still where it had been, a line that had been true all along. "I'll head out." "Thank you," Marcus said, and the thanks sounded like what it was, real gratitude. "Kiana will walk with you so you can find the best spot by the path." Kiana stepped in at once, not with a hand on his arm, not with a push, but with a clear direction in her body and voice. "This way," she said gently. "You can still hear the music from the bench under the sycamore." Doug nodded. He took a step, then another. At the rope, he paused and looked back at Marcus. "Congratulations," he said, and this time the word didn't feel like a pass to stay. It felt like a simple wish for good. "Thank you," Marcus said again. He lifted the water glass he had set down earlier and gave a small nod to Doug, a gesture that meant go well. Kiana guided Doug across the rope and along the garden's open edge to the public path. As they walked, she pointed out the sign about private bookings and the schedule posted near the gate. "People can reserve the space through the park's office," she said lightly. "There are flyer racks at City Hall if you want more info." Doug made a quiet sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sigh. "I'll remember that," he said. At the bench, he sat, as if the bench had been waiting for him all along. Inside the garden, the air released the last bit of tightness. Naomi's mother touched her daughter's hand. "He handled that well," she whispered, and Naomi nodded, her eyes soft with relief and pride. Jamal moved to Marcus's side. "You okay?" he asked under his breath. "I'm good," Marcus said. "Thank you for keeping it calm." "You kept it calm," Jamal said. Then he grinned. "Mayor!" Marcus rolled his eyes in a friendly way. "Today I'm a groom." The garden settled back into its warm rhythm, like a song that had paused and then found its beat again. Naomi's father stepped forward with his little note card, his voice steady and kind. He spoke about the day he met Naomi at the hospital, when she was born, her quiet eyes, and the way she grew into a person who listens before she speaks. He looked at Marcus and said he saw the same quality in him, the habit of listening and then choosing wisely. People smiled and nodded. The aunties clinked their glasses with soft taps, and the children tried to copy the gentle sound by tapping their plastic cups together. Laughter rolled lightly across the rows of chairs, then eased into applause. The music lifted again, gentle at first. Naomi and Marcus took the dance floor. The first dance felt like a private conversation that everyone was invited to witness. They moved slow, and their movements were simple. Nothing fancy, only close and honest. Naomi rested her head on Marcus's shoulder. Marcus matched his breathing to the music and to her. The DJ kept the volume low so grandparents could talk at the tables while they watched. A breeze carried the smell of rosemary and lemon, and the string lights above began to glow as the sky softened. Halfway through the reception, the microphone flickered. The sound crackled and then cut out, as if the system had decided to take a short nap. A small hush fell. Kenny, the DJ, lifted a hand that said, "I've got it." Jamal stepped in too, checking the cable under the table. Naomi laughed softly and said, "It's okay. We can project." She took a breath and thanked everyone in her clear teacher voice that carried well even without a mic. By the time she finished, Kenny had the sound back. People clapped for him like he had just fixed the engine on a plane. The tiny hiccup became part of the story, a reminder that little things can go wrong and joy can hold steady anyway. Kiana kept walking the edge of the garden, not with worry, but with care. She made sure the rope was still secure and the sign was straight. She checked the water pitchers, refolded a napkin, guided an elder to a softer chair, and reminded a teen to watch out for the cords near the DJ table. Whenever she passed Naomi or Marcus, she gave a small nod. It meant, "Everything is fine." The staff gathered plates, offered seconds, and kept the dessert table bright with fresh slices of cake. They were a quiet team that made the day look easy. When it was time for cake, Marcus picked up the knife with Naomi, and they cut a neat slice together. They fed each other a small bite. There was no mess, no show, just a sweet moment. A cousin joked, "That's how you know they are careful people." And an aunt answered, "Careful and kind is a good mix." Some guests chose cake, some chose fruit, some took both. Children watched the strawberries like jewels. The little ring bearer finally relaxed and chased bubbles with the flower girl. Mrs. Green told a neighbor that the lemon layer tasted like sunshine. The garden was full of these small, bright notes. As twilight grew, people formed a circle for a group dance. Marcus's grandmother surprised the crowd by stepping into the middle and swaying her shoulders with a confident smile. The circle cheered and clapped in time. Naomi's students, who had come with their parents, held hands on the edge of the dance floor and tried to copy the steps. The photographer moved like a quiet bird, finding good angles without breaking the circle. He took one photo that caught many small things at once. Naomi laughing with her eyes closed, Marcus watching her with a soft smile, the aunties swaying, the children's hands linked, the string lights above like tiny stars. Later, as guests began to drift toward the gate, the goodbyes came in waves. A teacher said, "I'll see you Monday, but I'll think of this all week." A neighbor said, Thank you for inviting us. It felt like the whole town's garden tonight. Jamal hugged Marcus and whispered, kindness with a backbone. And they both smiled. Kiana shook hands with the couple and said, it was an honor. Naomi said, your calm saved the edges. And Kiana accepted the compliment with a small bow of her head. The DJ packed his cables, humming the last tune under his breath, as if the music was now inside him and would stay there a while. When the last guest left, Marcus and Naomi walked the stone path slowly, hand in hand. They touched the backs of the chairs as they passed, the way people touch a place to say thank you. They paused at the gate and looked back. The jars of daisies still stood in their rows. The rosemary still made the air clean. The path looked like a good sentence that ended with a period, not an exclamation mark. A simple finish to a good day. They thanked Kiana and the staff, thanked Kenny, and thanked the caterer, who boxed leftovers with care. Naomi asked the caterer to send a tray to the shelter where she sometimes volunteered. The caterer said, already planned, and smiled. The next morning, the house was quiet and filled with thin light. Naomi made tea in her favorite mug, the one with the chipped rim that always turned the same spot toward her mouth. Marcus brewed coffee and wrote 2 lines on a sticky note, kindness with a backbone. He pressed it to the fridge. They sat at the table and made a short list. Write thank you notes, share photos with family, drop off flowers to the nursing home, and take a walk by the river. They added one more line. Set new boundaries for home. Marcus talked about protecting their evenings from work calls, except for true emergencies. Naomi talked about keeping one night a week for quiet reading and one Saturday morning each month for community work together. On Monday, Marcus visited City Hall not as a groom but as a public servant. He wore a regular shirt and rolled-up sleeves. In between meetings, he stopped by the parks office to thank the staff for the garden program. He also asked about clearer signs for private events. Let's make kindness simple, he said. If people can see the rules at a glance, we can keep the tone soft. The staff liked the idea of a small board near the open edge, with a map that showed public paths and private zones when rented. They talked about adding a line. Please enjoy the music from the parkside today. Clear, friendly, direct. Wednesday afternoon, a desk clerk told Marcus that someone was waiting in the lobby to see him. He didn't say what it's about, she said. Marcus walked out and found Doug sitting on the bench. Doug stood when he saw him. He had taken off his sunglasses and held them in his hand, like a habit he was trying to change. I wanted to say I'm sorry, Doug said. His voice was plain, without decoration. I shouldn't have walked in. I didn't respect your day. Thank you for coming, Marcus said. That means a lot. He pointed toward a small meeting room with a window. Let's sit for a few minutes. They sat at a simple table. Doug explained that he had been walking through the park after a hard morning. He had seen the lights and heard the music, and the celebration had pulled him like a tide. I told myself it was harmless, he said. I ignored the signs. I told myself they were for other people. He shook his head once. That's not who I want to be. Marcus listened. He asked one question at a time. What would make it right in your mind? Marcus asked. I can't undo it, Doug said. I can only learn. If there's a way to help the community, I want to try. Maybe volunteer at the garden. Maybe donate the cost of a plate to a youth program. Marcus nodded. Those are good ideas, he said. The community garden needs weekend helpers. The youth center uses donations for art supplies and sports gear. He paused and added something else. You could also help build the new signs. The parks team is planning them now. Doug gave a small, relieved laugh. I can hold a drill and a paintbrush, he said. That sounds right. That Saturday, the community garden held a volunteer morning. The sky was a little gray and a light rain came and went, but the work moved forward anyway. Kiana was there in work jeans and a baseball cap. She greeted Doug like she greeted everyone else, by name, but without fuss. "Glad you made it," she said. "We've got raised beds to refresh, mulch to spread, and a sign to build." She pointed to a stack of cedar boards and a set of simple plans. Mrs. Green arrived with a thermos of hot cocoa for the younger volunteers. She saw Doug and gave him that same careful look, but this time it carried warmth. "Good to see you. Helping?" she said. Doug nodded and said, "I'm glad to be here." They worked side by side for a while, packing soil around new seedlings. Mrs. Green talked about how the garden started as 4 boxes and a dream. Doug listened and let his hands learn the rhythm of smoothing, pressing, and watering. Marcus and Naomi showed up late in the morning with fresh muffins from a bakery. They set the box by the sign project and rolled up their sleeves. "We can sand," Naomi said. "I do careful work all week." Marcus laughed and said he could measure and double-check the lines. Together with the park staff, Doug, and a few teens, they built a clean frame and painted it with a friendly message. "Welcome to the community garden. Today's celebration is a private event. Please enjoy the park path and music from the bench under the sycamore. Thank you for keeping joy peaceful." When the paint dried, they set the sign near the open edge where it would be easy to see and hard to ignore. It looked simple and kind, like a helpful hand on a shoulder. The teens took photos, proud to show their work. Kiana took one too and sent it to the park's office. "Edges protected," she wrote. On Monday, Doug stopped by the youth center and made a quiet donation. He also asked if they needed help at next month's art night. The director smiled and said, "We always need a." A few weeks passed, and the story of the wedding settled into the town's quiet memory, not as drama, but as a small example of how calm choices can guide a day back to joy. People who had been there told simple details to neighbors. The way the music softened, the way the request was clear, the way the edge of the garden held. No one used names. No one tried to make the moment larger than it was. They spoke about a lesson, not a person. They said, "It worked because everyone stayed kind." At the elementary school, Naomi used the story in a gentle way during a lesson about public and private spaces. She did not talk about the wedding. She used a drawing of a house, a porch, a sidewalk, and a park. She asked her students which parts were for everyone and which parts were for the family. The children raised their hands and shared good answers. One said, "The porch is for friends who are invited." Another said, "The sidewalk is for everyone, but we don't step on the flowers." Naomi nodded and wrote those sentences on the board. She said, "Boundaries protect beauty. That's why we use them." The class drew their own maps, adding doors, benches, and signs with friendly words. One kid wrote, "Please enjoy the music from the bench." Naomi smiled at that. At City Hall, Marcus worked with the parks team on clearer signs and better maps for open spaces. They created a simple template that could be used at gardens, pavilions, and small stages in the parks. The template used plain, friendly language. It said, "Welcome. Today this area is reserved. Please enjoy the park path and music from here. Thank you for helping us keep joy peaceful." They also started a friendly ambassadors pilot with older teens and a few adults who liked community service. The role was simple: wear a small badge, stand near the edges during events, and help guide visitors with soft words and open hands. He asked Kiana to give the training because she had a gift for calm direction. She agreed. Doug signed up. He did not ask to lead. He asked to help. On the first evening of his volunteer shift, there was a jazz quartet playing at the community garden. The air was warm, the lights were soft, and the benches along the park path filled up with people who liked listening from the public side. Doug arrived early, put on the small ambassador badge, and listened to Kiana's short instructions. "We use our eyes and our voices," she said. "We say please and thank you. We point to the sign. We give options. We don't push." Doug nodded and repeated the steps back to her, not to impress her, but to fix them in his mind. When the music began, a jogger slowed at the rope and drifted in without seeing the sign. Doug stepped over with a smile. "Hi there. The garden is reserved tonight," he said. "There's a great listening spot under the sycamore." He pointed, then walked 2 steps with the jogger so the new path felt natural. "Thanks," the jogger said, adjusting an earbud. "I didn't see the sign." Doug tapped the top edge of the sign lightly and said, "We just put these in. We're learning together." The jogger found the bench and stretched his legs to the beat. The music continued. The edges held. Across the garden, Mrs. Green arrived with a light scarf on her shoulders. She noticed Doug at the rope, guiding people with simple words. She gave him a small nod when their eyes met. It was the kind of nod that adults use to mark slow change. "I see the work." "Keep going." Doug returned the nod and went back to his post. The habit of showing up was new to him, but it felt good. It felt like putting weight on the right foot. Naomi and Marcus came by after dinner and listened from the path. They did not step inside because they had not been invited to this event. They held hands on the bench and let the music wash over them. When a trio of teenagers approached and looked uncertain, Naomi pointed at the sign and read the words out loud in a kind, "We can sit here," she told them, "and still hear everything." The teens smiled and sat on the grass, leaning against their backpacks. One of them hummed. Another sketched the scene in a small notebook. The third closed her eyes and just listened. Later that week, the local paper ran a small column on the editorial page called "On Boundaries and Belonging." It didn't mention the wedding or any person by name. It quoted the new park signs and praised the Friendly Ambassadors program for making rules easy to follow. The columnist also interviewed elders for short quotes about community. Mrs. Green's line appeared at the end. "Good days have boundaries. That's part of what makes them good." The words were simple and true. People clipped the column and put it on their fridges next to school art and grocery lists. At the youth center's art night, Naomi ran a table where children painted small wooden boards to hang at home. The boards said things like, "Please," "Knock," and "Welcome. Come in." Doug stood at the wash station, swapping murky cups for clean water and lining up brushes to dry on dish towels. The room smelled like tempera paint and pizza. A boy held up his finished sign and said, "This is for my bedroom door." The sign read, "Ask first, then come in." Naomi said, "That's a good way to show respect." Doug smiled, handed the boy a clean brush for details, and said, "Edges make space for kindness." The boy nodded as if he understood it fully. Small changes began to stack up around town. The Saturday market added a friendly sign near the vendor tents to guide dogs and bikes. The library put a small, "Quiet Area Today" placard near the study tables during exam weeks. At the river concert, volunteers stood at the entrance with soft voices and offered maps that showed where chairs were allowed and where blankets would keep the path clear. People did not follow every rule perfectly, but because the rules were written like an invitation instead of a warning, more people chose to help. At home, Naomi and Marcus kept practicing their own boundaries. They made a simple rule. During dinner, phones stayed in another room. If a message was urgent, it could wait 20 minutes. They kept their reading nights, even when work was busy. They invited neighbors over on Sunday afternoons for open porch hours, a gentle time with iced tea and a plate of cut fruit where anyone could sit, chat, or not chat at all. No agenda, just presence. People came and left with lighter hearts, as if someone had pressed a reset button and the week ahead was a little easier to face. One afternoon, the bakery downtown sent a small box to City Hall with a note for the couple who kept joy safe. Inside was a short stack of lemon bars dusted with sugar. Marcus took the box home and opened it at the kitchen table. Naomi laughed when she saw the note. "The cake that tasted like sunshine lives on," she said. They ate 2 bars and saved the rest for the next porch hour. Not every day was smooth. A week later, at a picnic in the park, a man tried to bring his dog into a no-dog zone near the children's play area. A friendly ambassador stepped in, pointed to the sign, and explained the rule kindly. The man started to argue, then stopped, then nodded. He tied his dog's leash to a bench at the edge and sat there to watch his child play. He scratched the dog's head and said, "We'll sit at the border and cheer." It wasn't perfect. It didn't have to be. It was good enough for that day. Soon, the parks team made the community garden sign standard for all open-edge venues in town. Kiana kept a small box in the storage closet with extra ropes, stakes, and 2 spare signs, just in case. She gave a 15-minute volunteer orientation before each event. Nothing heavy, just the steps. Smile, point, explain, thank. She liked to end with this line: "We are not bouncers. We are ushers for joy." People liked that. It helped them stand tall without being hard. As summer turned to fall, the garden hosted a harvest dinner. Long tables were set under the lights, and a local chef made soup from the herbs and vegetables grown in the raised beds. The air was cool and smelled like thyme and fresh bread. Naomi and Marcus were invited this time, and they sat near the end of a table with Kiana, Doug, and Mrs. Green. The chef stood to speak about the meal, and then the mic passed around for short toasts. No one spoke long. They kept it simple. When the mic reached Doug, he looked at the faces around him, people he once saw as strangers and now greeted by name. He raised the mic just a bit and said, "Thank you for showing me how to be part of a good day." Then he set the mic down. The table clinked glasses softly. That was enough. On the walk home, Naomi and Marcus took the long way along the river. The moon was a thin curve. Streetlights lit the path in small pools. Marcus thought about the little card in his wallet and how it had come out on the wedding day. He hadn't wanted that. But he was glad he had used his role with care, like a tool taken down from a shelf for one job and returned quietly when the work was done. He said out loud, though not loudly, "Authority should feel like a gentle hand, not a heavy one." Naomi nodded and squeezed his arm. "Your gentle hand held the day," she said. "That is what people will remember." Months later, on a cool evening near their first anniversary, they walked by the garden again. A different couple was getting married. Music floated over the rope. The same friendly sign stood near the open edge. A few park visitors paused to read it, smiled, and chose the bench under the sycamore. Doug happened to be on shift as an ambassador. He greeted passers-by. With a small wave and a quiet, "This way, please," Kiana adjusted a string light and then laughed at something an auntie said. Mrs. Green sat near the gate with a shawl over her shoulders, watching the circle of dancers with a pleased look that said, "Yes, this is how it should be." Marcus and Naomi did not go.